But what would you do if you had access to that?
I don't know. Blow it, I guess.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. That's what I did. I blew it.
Hey investors, Bradley here from Watson Estates, and you're listening to the largest, fastest growing podcast for Toronto real estate on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. Today, man, we had a good episode. I'm so glad to share with you my interview today with guest Alfonso Cuadra. Just a few accolades to share with you. He's the CEO of Arca Property Management, founder of Cuadra Youth Foundation, professional speaker at Keyspire. He's an author of a book called From the Ground Up, TV host, producer. Man, this guy's got a large list of accolades, but I'll tell you the most valuable thing he brings to this episode is his story. My goodness, you're going to love this one. If you're looking to be inspired in order to take that next step and grow your real estate portfolio, look no further. This episode is for you. If you're getting value, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel, and do Alfonso a favor and share this on social platforms as well. I know you're going to love this episode. Enjoy the show. Alfonso, thank you for joining us on the show. How are you doing today?
Hey, pleasure to be here, my man. Pleasure to be here. I see a lot of good things. Keep it up.
Thank you. And when you sent me a message, I'm like, who is this guy? I'm going to learn a little bit about this guy. And as the more I learn, the more I want to know. And so I thought, you know what, let's get this guy on the show. He can tell us a little bit about his story, which is a pretty good one from what I can tell. And I want you to motivate our audience today. We're going to play around with some of that. I know you're laughing because you don't believe in motivation, but you're going to tell me why along the way. I want you to start off with your story. Tell us a little bit about how did Alfonso become the guy he is today?
Whoa, so I'm going to give you the cliff notes. We could be here quite a while, but I was born in El Salvador, Central America, a little itty bitty country, smaller than New Brunswick, right? And in the 70s during the Civil War, and my mom was unfortunately caught up with politics there, and we ended up in a situation where she was incarcerated, illegally detained, you could say, and there was a lot of like human rights issues, and this is what's going on in the 70s. You're probably too young to remember.
Definitely,
you probably weren't even born yet. So I'm just aging myself right now. But 70s and 80s, a lot of turmoil in Latin America, especially Central America. And so we moved around from country to country, actually ended up in 2 wars. So a war in El Salvador, I had to go in hiding, and, they thought they were going to kidnap me. I wasn't allowed out for over 3 years. My mom went to prison, illegally detained because of some political issues. We moved around. We ended up in another country, Nicaragua, also in Central America, and another war broke out. So between the ages of 2 to 9, I've spent it, running away from regimes, running away from wars. And after 5 years old, you start to realize, you become aware of what's going on in the world. And so by the time I had come to Canada, I was 9 years old. We came here as landing refugees from war-torn Nicaragua at the time. I was born in El Salvador. And, I had a really rough time integrating into school. Now, think about this. Young person had to go from, first of all, I was in hiding, so I couldn't go to school. And then moving country to country, you don't get those educational opportunities like everybody else. And also on top of that, in school, they never taught anything that I was interested in. I don't know if you're like me, but I would be sitting there in school and I'm like, why do I need to know this? So, I asked a lot of good questions. I asked a question to one of my teachers when I was 11 years old. And I said, because I heard this word mortgage. And I said, I put out my hand. I said, okay, I have a question. What's a mortgage? And the answer that I got was, a mortgage is something you get when you're older.
That sounds exciting. I mean, it's kind of like, true. What? It's not wrong.
And even at 10 years old, I knew that wasn't an answer. You know what I mean?
It's like COVID, right?
Yeah. So, So I knew I was on my own, right? And so I got so frustrated with school. And you know what? I believe in education, but it just wasn't for me.
Right.
I ended up dropping out of high school at 15. And because of some conflict at home, I also ended up leaving home. Now I'm 15 years old, homeless, sleeping on park benches, in banks. To my lowest, darkest moment in my life was panhandling for change. And the reason I bring that up in interviews and on stage is to make people realize that, okay, I had a dark moment, but we all have had dark moments. Like, as I'm talking about a dark moment, you could probably think about a dark moment in your life where you're just so frustrated, and you're almost at a point where you want to give up, right? And your listeners right now can probably think about a dark moment in their life where they're just like, why me, right? And at 15 years old, imagine, I had so much blame in my heart. I had so many reasons to be angry, and like, how did I end up there? And so much blame. And at 15 years old, I felt like the entire world was against me. And and so I learned a lot on those streets. I had a lot of dark moments, but I had a life changing moment. And I think this is where you want to get to when we talk about motivation, inspiration, and finding your why. So at 17 years old, I became a father, and that changed my life forever. I looked at this little girl, and I knew that I had to take responsibility over my life. I didn't have many skills, but I went back to school, got a job. Jobs weren't paying much back then, $5 an hour. You can tell how long ago that was. Actually, I
was too young to remember that.
I was 17, right? Look, I'm going to share this picture with you right here. This is in my office. This is my daughter, Talia. She's 25 today. She's 25 years old. She's turning 26 this year. So you can see how long ago that was. But it was a life-changing moment because I discovered purpose.
Mm-hmm.
That was my why, and at 17, that can be very powerful. And a purpose powerful enough can make you unstoppable. And so I got a job, $5 an hour. And it was hardly enough to feed a small family. I was going to school full time, and I had this little job. And so what I did was I started a little business, a little, what they call it now, side hustle. But it was a clothing business out of my locker in high school. I was selling jeans, T-shirts. I would go to Toronto, Montreal, New York, and buy mixtapes and jeans and T-shirts and sell them out of my backpack in locker in high school. Now, what I discovered was the power of profits. If one of your listeners is taking notes, this is definitely the time to take notes. The power of profits. And at 17, I learned such a powerful lesson. On one side, my hour was worth $5 an hour. And on the other side, I could flip a pair of jeans that I bought for $20 for $60, making a $40 profit within a 10-minute transaction. Now, I didn't know the words profit at 17. I didn't know, I didn't understand all the business behind it. All I knew is that I flipped my money, right? And that's what I wanted to pursue for the rest of my life. I knew that, if I could find a product that was valuable enough and I could find it at a discount, I could sell it retail. That's all I knew. My 17-year-old brain was saying, this is somehow better than dishwashing for $5 an hour, right?
Right.
And so I pursued profits for the rest of my life. I opened a physical location at 19. By the time I was 21, that first location ended up resulting in multiple stores across Canada. I was extremely successful in the clothing business. The only problem was that I was very much a consumer at 21. Bradley, how old are you?
I'm 30, sir.
So, because you look 25, I was going to say.
You know what? I'll take that as a compliment. I try and shave to try and get that little bit extra, but it did work today.
Well, okay, so that was 10 years ago for you, or 9 years ago for you. And so remember being 21, if you had access to all this money, like a company that was, pretty much printing money, what would you do at 21?
Dude, I was nowhere in this mindset at the age of 21.
But what would you do if you had access to that money?
I don't know. Blow it, I guess.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. That's what I did. I blew it. Cars, jewelry. I had moved to Miami. And, when the market correction came in 2001 as a result of 9/11, I didn't even know that existed. I didn't know that there was recessions and, I didn't know there was recoveries, expansions. I had no clue. I didn't even know what a recession was. And, there was a mini market correction after 9/11. Things stopped, everything froze, and I was inexperienced. I had no reserves, and I almost lost everything. So at 21, I had almost $1 million in my bank account. And now we fast forward to 24, I'm negative $1 million. So now I blew through everything, and I had all this stuff, and none of the stuff had any value. And so I remember being extremely depressed and feeling down on myself. It's like, damn, I forgot about why I started, right? I forgot about the reason that I started. And I started to ask better questions, right? Like, first of all, this is not the way, and so what's the way? And so I was fortunate enough to meet some mentors, and they gave me some books: Rich Dad Poor Dad, Think and Grow Rich. And these two books were kind of like the gateway drug to hundreds of other books about wealth, investing. And what I discovered was, number one, I was very much a consumer, but number two, that I was vulnerable in business because I only had one stream of income, right? And so at that point, what I realized after reading all those books is that all wealthy people own real estate. And real estate is the most powerful asset for the wealthy because leverageable. And the combination of business and real estate is what gives the 4% an unfair advantage over the 96%. And so at that point, when I was 22, 23, 24, going on 25, I realized the value of real estate, and I was going to build a second income stream. And in this case, I said to myself, I want this income stream to be indestructible, Armageddon proof, right? And that's why I chose multifamily. And I changed I converted my mindset from a consumer mindset to an investor mindset. After almost losing everything, my business flourished. I went back and rebuilt my business. I reduced my cost of my expenses. I sold the Cadillacs, the Mercedes, the BMWs, and I bought a economical car, right? Dodge Neon, for anybody that's ever owned a Dodge Neon. I mean, I was proud to drive that Dodge Neon. I bought a triplex and I moved into one of the units. And slowly I started to build that portfolio. And then boom, 2008 came. And 2008 was the next market correction. And 2008 was the first time I was able to take advantage of the market correction, because now I'm in real estate. I know exactly what I'm doing. I got cash on hand. I was no longer depending on one stream of income. And so now 2008 comes where all the money just disappeared. Now in Canada, we didn't get it hit as bad as they did in the US, where there was a market crash, right. But it was definitely a correction here in Canada. On top of that, money disappeared. And I was in apartment buildings in that time. And so what I discovered was, the CMHC model, right? Because that was the only lending that was really available in 2008 were insured mortgages. And so they have a very strict underwriting policy. And so I remember being so frustrated and asking really good questions like, why do you guys underwrite properties in such a way, apartment buildings? And they said, well, we don't want to lose. Well, I don't want to lose either. So I started to adopt that underwriting philosophy to my business. And since then, I've scaled to owning apartment buildings all across Canada, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of doors from New Brunswick, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Ontario, Quebec. And I fell in love with apartment buildings. That's what I do full time. I have a professional property management company. I love to teach people. I'm on stages. Before COVID, I was on stages all across North America, teaching people on how to invest, how to go from the consumer mindset to the investor mindset. And if you can make that shift, because it starts with mindset, if you can make that shift, your life will change forever. So I hope that wasn't too long. But
hey,
I thought it would be an interesting story for you.
I love letting guests speak. And I'll tell you, one of the things I love about you, Alfonso, is first of all, you're extremely authentic. I think regardless of the story, you come by it very humbly. And I just love the way you've been able to take your circumstances and be able to really self-evaluate. Like you've really been able to identify who you are today and where you want to go. And you've had no shortage of bumps along the way, right? So that's
what makes it fun, though. That's what makes it fun.
I guess so. Not in the moment.
Not in the moment. Not in the moment.
Not in the moment.
I feel like pulling. Look,
talking about it after, maybe.
I lost my hair, some of those moments. But guess what? At the end of the day, that's life, right? It's the ups and downs that make it interesting, right? And you just have to learn from every down. So the next time there's a down, it's not you don't go as far down as more than you have to, right? It's just like people live this roller coaster life, right? If you're living a roller coaster life, it's because you're not learning from your mistakes. What it should be like a rolling valley, right? You have ups and downs, but your ups are they're up, but you know what? There's some downs, and some downs are not too down, but but at the end of the day, you are just growing, you're progressing. And as long as you're better than yesterday, and as long as you're better today than you were last year and the year before, if you're progressing, you're growing, that's where life fulfillment comes from.
Yeah. I mean, when we speak to a lot of investors, they have their kind of why and they give us the highlights. But what I love about your story is people can relate to what you're saying, and this is where I think that authenticity comes in. Now, I wonder, as a speaker and as a host in a lot of these, I guess, all the things you're doing, coaching and otherwise, do you find some people say, well, you know what, Alfonso, like, I don't have that kind of story. Like, I don't have the war-torn story and get it all and lose it all. Do you find that is something that is a requirement, or have you found that that's
Absolutely
just your story?
not.
I'm curious what that pushback looks like.
Yeah, so I definitely know where you're coming from, and you don't need that story. And my story is not the worst story that there is, right? It's just my story. And I've decided not to be a victim in my own story, right? And I guess we all have a story that we tell ourselves, right? And are you a victim in your story, or are you a survivor, right? Are you a coaster, or you're an expander in your story? Like, what is the story that you're consistently telling yourself? That's what matters, right? And like my daughter, she's 26 now. And she's entering the world of business, and she's she has her business. She had that because what, she didn't live a war-torn life, and it's not like I'm going to create that for her. The reason I work so hard is so my kids, I have two daughters, Talia and Alicia. The second one is 14 years old, but it's not like it's hard to create that for them. That hustle, that hunger, and it's easy to have that when you have nothing. But what if your life was ordinary, right? What if you were a suburban kid, right? What if you didn't live on the streets, right?
And the funny thing is a lot of parents, I know for myself too, and not to say my story is anywhere like yours, but and not to say it's better or worse, it's different. But that's something that I, as a parent, think about all the time is like, how do we create the grit in the next generation? Or if that's us, if we are the next generation, which I'm probably closer in line to that, how do I get this grit? How do I get this inspiration or motivation
Yeah.
to, whether it's push or pull to something? How do we create that? Because I think that has been the key to your success, if we were to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a pendulum, right? So my pendulum swung all the way over there, and I definitely get inspired from other people's stories, right? The reason I share my story, I feel that I have a responsibility to share my story, and just to show people that someone can come from literally nothing, right? And make it, like,
and bring value to this country.
Yeah,
right?
And like for example, when I was I told you I slept in a bank, in a few banks actually. A few years ago, I was hired by the National Bank of Canada to go and train their top level executives on success. And I remember getting up there and I said, guys, you wouldn't believe it. Life is full circle, right? Because when I was 15, I slept in one of your banks. And now I'm here teaching you about success. And so everybody's like, that's how I started the talk, and life is full circle. And if you feel like you can't find something within yourself, look at other people's story to be inspired by, and that's why you started talking about the motivation component. And the reason, it's like, you don't need to have a crazy story. You don't have to come from a really, really dark place in order to be extremely successful. It happens, but not everybody has that, right? Like Bill Gates lived in suburbia. He was a regular kid. His mom was part of a university, and he was able to have access to computers at a very early age, right? So there's something to be said about the 10,000 hours, right? So look for others' stories to be inspired. What I tell my daughter is, find something to hold on to within your life, so you can say, you know what, that's the reason. Like, there has to be a why. Like, that why has to be powerful to you and you only. And it could be something like your best buddy told you it's not possible, right? Something as simple as that, you can grab onto it, right? Your car breaks down and it's uncomfortable. You know what? You can grab onto that, right? Your credit card gets declined, right? In front of your friends or your family. That can be an embarrassing moment. And you say to yourself, you know what? That's the last time that's going to happen to me ever again, right? It just has to be a moment in your life that's significant to you that you can grab onto. Look at other stories for inspiration. And here's the next thing. Put in the work. 10,000 hours makes you an expert at anything, makes you qualified at anything. And what you're doing here with this podcast, you're doing exactly that. You're leveraging other people's stories to add to the value that you're going to add to other people's lives.
Dude, I'm getting all the value. We don't need any listeners in this room right now. And this has been worth every second.
Well, that's what I'm saying. And look, what you created a platform that serves others, but indirectly, it also serves you.
Absolutely. You sound like you're straight out of Think and Grow Rich book. When you talk, like, all of the examples you're giving all have an emotional link to it. Like, that emotion that you're putting behind the why is where you kind of get that extra push. You know, that's what I'm kind of hearing in that explanation there.
Yeah. And we talked about the motivation. The problem with motivation is that it's short term, right? Even the like, you can go rah, 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 go to an event where everybody's like, and when you go home, there's nothing, right? Because that's motivation. You can motivate the football team and they will go perform that day. But what you're looking for is inspiration. Because inspiration, the second you're inspired, something switches in you and the pendulum starts swinging the other way, and you start on a momentum. And if you can add more fuel by understanding why you're doing something, by understanding your why, you become unstoppable, right? And so it's inspiration that actually gets people to change their lives for the long term. Motivation is short term. Like you can motivate a monkey, and all you have is a motivated monkey, right? And so that motivation, and where people are like, oh, you motivate me. I don't want to motivate you. I want to inspire you to change. I want to inspire you to change behavior, because that will have an ultimate impact in your life, not just motivation, right? And so look for inspiration versus motivation.
So Alfonso, let me ask you this, man. So I'm sitting here, I've got maybe a little portfolio of properties and I want to blow up. I want to go crazy big here. What do I do? What comes next? What's the catalyst to inspire me?
Yeah. So this is something that I noticed back in March, almost a year of COVID. Wow. You know, I started to look closely at people's behaviors, right? So I noticed that there was people that retreated, right? They contracted during that time.
I noticed that too.
Right? Yeah. There was people that were just like spectators, and they're like, no, it's gonna change. Everything's gonna be all right by April, you know, or by June, by August, but you know. But it's okay. I'm just going to watch the news, watch Netflix. Everything's going to be all right. Or next year. And then there's people that took action. There was people that expanded during that time, right? And I was one of those people that when the second COVID hit, I went right into action. And it's time-stamped. I have a YouTube channel, and What's
it called?
Alfonso Cuadra. If you go to YouTube, you type in Alfonso Cuadra.
We'll put it in the links too. Everyone can check it out.
Yeah. So you can go to my channel on YouTube, and back in March, it's time stamped. I did a video. It was like, you know, my ideas, my thoughts on COVID. That's all it was. And I said, guys, first things first. You have to stand in your truth, and you have to admit and realize that life will never be the same ever again. Never again. And two, get ready for massive opportunities that are coming our way, and take the time right now to build relationships. Anyway, so that video, you know, I think it was like 800 views or 900 views. Anyways, I would say a big portion of that people that viewed that video came back and said, Alfonso, how can you say this? You don't know what's going to happen. You don't have a crystal ball. You can't say we're not going to go back to normal or whatever. I said, guys, I don't care on whether we go back to normal or not. All I know is, you know what? I'm expanding, and I'm leaning into COVID. I'm not going to just sit here and freeze. I'm going to lean into it, right? And so for someone like you that has a portfolio of properties, you need to be always in consistent expansion. Whatever your goals are, double them. Because a good goal is something that scares you and excites you at the same time. And so, for example, the goal in our business, we have a 10-year goal of getting to 75,000 doors, and a 5-year goal to get into 7,500. Okay. Now I already know in my mind exactly what I'm going to do, but I can't wait for that to happen. I have to take massive action right now in order to make that happen. I'm the driver of that, right? And so what I do is I reverse engineer. I ask myself, what does and I'll start with the 5 years at first. So I take the macro goal, and then I start to break it down into manageable pieces. And so let's go to 5 years, 7,500 doors. So if we were a company that had 7,500 doors, what would that look like? What softwares would we have? What kind of people would we have? What kind of personnel would we have? How would we organize? You know, there's going to be a whole infrastructure. And so now I bring that goal into the present. and I start operating as if I have the 7,500 doors right now, meaning I'm hiring the right people. We have the right softwares to be able to support that type of inventory. And so most people, they say to themselves, well, when I get there, then I'll hire my first, assistant, or I'm going to hire my first property manager, or, right now, because I'm small, I'm going to do everything myself. And so going back to your question, someone that has a small portfolio, which it's all relative, right? It's small, it's a matter of a perspective, because what you have and what you've accomplished is probably massive to somebody else. But it doesn't matter where you are. Number one, double your goals, and now bring that into the present by operating as if you are already there. And so what kind of properties are you going to be looking at? I bet you all the properties you're looking at probably are not in alignment with the goals that you have for yourself. And so why are you wasting your time, right? So look at your goal, 10, 5 years, and then every single action needs to be in direct alignment with those goals.
Beautiful. Let's go get it, guys.
Let's do it.
Let's go get it. Alfonso, man, can you tell us where people can find you on social, online?
Yeah, you know what? Started my YouTube channel. I have a lot of content there. I give. I want to change people's mindsets. Mm-hmm. I don't want to be remembered for the doors, the cars. I want to be remembered for the people that have helped. And if someone can take this podcast, I don't know, what are we, 20 minutes, half an hour, and they got something out of this today, my job is done, right? Because I'm on a mission to change people's lives. Whether it's one person at a time, one conversation at a time, whether it's a lot of people. So my YouTube channel, reach out. I'm very Googleable. All the socials, TikTok. I'm always giving content. I'm always giving value, and I always want to be. I always come from a position of serving.
Love that. Love that. Guys, if you did get value out of the show today, like I did, please share it. You can go to the podcast, share it on Instagram, whatever. Please like this video if you're following us on YouTube. And dude, this has been, you've pleasantly surprised me. I mean, I'm definitely inspired. It works.
Hey, you know what? That's what we wanted, right? We wanted
inspiration,
not motivation.
That's right. All right. Really appreciate it. And we'll see you next time.
We'll see you next time, man.